So Erev Tov, Baruchim Aba'im, welcome back. Yeah, everyone there? Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome back. We are continuing Hilchot Pesach. In the chat, I have sent the link for tonight if you want to follow on the Zoom. I won't be sharing the screen, so if you want to follow the text inside on Sefaria, there it is. It's in the chat box. So we are continuing our Siman Taf Lamed Chet 438. So we have seen so far a quick summary of what we've learned. In 429, we talked about the laws of the month of Pesach, of Nisan, and what you're not allowed to do. 430, we talked about Shabbat HaGadol. In 431, we talked about the correct time to do Bedikat Chametz. In 432, we talked about the exact text of the blessing of Bedikat Chametz and appointing emissaries to do Bedikat Chametz on your behalf. In 433, we discussed all the details of how to do Bedikat Chametz, where to do Bedikat Chametz, and so on and so forth. Then last week, in 434, we discussed what happens after Bedikat Chametz and how you have to immediately do Bi'ur, and the Bi'ur in the night is more important than the Bi'ur during the day. And we talked about the different texts at night and at day. And then in 435, we discussed if a person didn't do Bedikat Chametz at nighttime, then he has to continue during the day, and even on Pesach, and even after Pesach, we learned, remarkably, he has to do Bedikat Chametz. And 436, we discussed very briefly the concept of a person who leaves his home. None of this is really practical or relevant today because of the fact that nowadays we have communication without being in person. And then we finished off 437, we discussed the laws of a person who rents a house to his friend on the 14th. What happens? Who's the responsibility upon? Okay, that's what we saw last time. Okay, 438, we will do quickly. There's one major point I want to bring out. Well, two major points I want to bring out. So, but we'll see it quickly. So it's Siman Taf Lamed Chet. עכבר שנכנס למקום בדוק וכיכר בפיו ובו בית סעיפים, the laws of a mouse, and also a child who enter into a room carrying bread. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, סעיף א' in תף למד ח'. עכבר שנכנס לבית בדוק וכיכר בפיו. So the house has been checked, you've done everything on the night of the 14th, everything is great, and then what happens is a mouse suddenly comes in and he's scurrying away and he's got a loaf of bread in his mouth, or he's got a piece of bread in his mouth. And what do we do? And then they follow after him and they find crumbs of the bread, even crumbs which, if you put together, will be the amount of the entire piece of bread. So you saw the mouse running in, piece of bread, and then you run after him, you can't find him, and you come later and you see lots of different pieces of bread, crumbs of bread, which together all make that piece. So you could argue and say, look, I found the crumbs, I found what he's done, so that's it. I can assume that what the bread which he came in with is the bread which I see here, the crumbs of it. Says Shulchan Aruch, the Gemara says explicitly, no, you can't rely on that. You have to actually search the entire house. Even though you see the crumbs. Why? Because the Gemara tells us it's not the norm for mice to create crumbs. They eat, they don't crumb it around. And therefore, the fact that you found crumbs means that these crumbs must have been from, you didn't complete the bedika, and the mouse has gone with his piece of bread, and that's somewhere still around, and therefore you still have to do bedikat hametz. Okay, that's not so relevant, but the Shulchan Aruch continues, אבל אם תינוק נכנס לבית בדוק וכיכר בידו, if a child entered a house or a room which has been searched already. And this applies not just on the 14th, but it can apply the whole month. And he's got in his hand or in his mouth bread, and you went in after, and you quickly ran on after him, and you find him, he's gone, you can't see the bread, but you look around, you see lots of crumbs around. Then here with a child, in contradistinction to the mouse, you can assume that the child makes crumbs. And therefore, the bread which he came in with is the same bread, and therefore those crumbs are the crumbs of the bread, and therefore that's good. We assume that he did eat it, and these crumbs are crumbs as leftover from his eating. Because it's the norm of a child to crumb around. Okay, but the clear implication is that if the child went in, you saw the child going in, you ran in, you couldn't, and you didn't have a chance, you were on the phone, you're in a meeting, and you see the child going up with a piece of bread, and now you don't know where it is. You look around, you can't see it. If you could see the crumbs, so we know where that's come from, that's fine. Because a child, as opposed to a mouse, makes crumbs, so that's good. So we can assume those crumbs are part of the bread. The rest of the bread, he must have eaten it. That's great. But if you can't find it, then it's clear that you have to go and search again. The question, though, is, which is not clear, well, the Shulchan Aruch does say habayit. Where do you have to search? So let's say you see him going into a room with this piece of bread. And then you're only able to come into this room 10 minutes later, and you can't see where this bread is anymore. So I have to search that room, obviously. Does that mean I now have to search the rest of the house? Because perhaps I saw him going in, and then he came out and walked around. This is actually, Mishnah Berurah brings a debate about that. Halacha is because it's the Rabbanan bedikat Chametz, because remember, over and over again, we've been saying this principle. Midoraita, if you did bitul, it works. Bedikat Chametz is the Rabbanan. Therefore, we can rely on the fact that it's only this room, and you only have to search the room itself. You don't have to search the entire house. So you search that room and that's fine. And again, this is all if there are no crumbs. If there are crumbs, then you can assume that that's the child who created the crumbs. Let me ask you a question. Why can't, even if we don't find crumbs of the child, why can't we say that there's a safek? Perhaps the child left the bread lying around and it's somewhere and you have to go and search for it. But perhaps he ate it. Why can't we say there's a safek here? And we should be lenient. Safek de Rabbanan Nikula. It's a safek with a rabbinic law of Bedikat Hametz. So why don't we say safek de Rabbanan Nikula? What would you answer to that? There's a real doubt. Maybe the child's eaten what he took upstairs. He took into the room. He could have eaten it. Fine. I understand that. He could have eaten it. He could have also left it or hidden it somewhere. So it's a safek de Rabbanan. Answer is we don't say that when there's a vadai. There's a vadai hametz which came in. En safek motzi midei vadai. The doubt cannot trump the definite. The definite is the child has come in with it. And they have to deal with that. If I can't see anything, safek, perhaps the child ate it, but perhaps not. I can't rely on safek d'Rabbanan Likula when there's a vadai, there's a definite hametz which has come in. If, however, I see crumbs, then there's a hazakah. Then there's a presumption that that must have been the child which created the crumbs, and therefore then it becomes permissible. So that's the difference whether there are crumbs with the child. With the mouse, however, the Gemara says, no, that doesn't work because the mouse doesn't create crumbs, apparently. The final point to bear in mind is that whenever we're talking about a child means a child she'en bodat, who has no intellect or knowledge at all. This is 1, 2, 3, you have each child. But once the child can respond, even if the child's young and he's not even the age of chinuch, once the child can respond and the child can answer, I went here and I ate it, or I went here and I threw it in the bin, all of that, the child is believed, however young he is, as long as he has data to respond and to communicate with you, that's sufficient. So all of this which we're talking about is a child who is somewhere of the ages of under 4 or so, 1, 2, 3, something around those ages. That's what we're talking about. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem. Okay. Now, the Shulchan Aruch brings one further opinion. He says, "Yesh omrim shim en baperorin kedei kol hakikar tzich hazor v'livdok." If the crumbs which we've been talking about with the child, there are crumbs, but there aren't crumbs which would together make up the piece of bread, then you have to go and check again. He brings that opinion, but the main opinion of Shulchan Aruch, which is what we follow, is that no, even if there are a bit of crumbs, we can assume that there's a bit of crumbs. So he's been playing around with this. He's eaten a bit, and he made the crumbs whilst he was eating it. So even if there aren't, so he came in with the whole piece of bread, and am I cutting out? No. Okay, so Katie must be you. So if he's coming in with a piece of bread and then you see half amount of crumbs, that's fine, because we can assume whilst he was eating the other half, then the other crumbs were made. Okay, good. Is that clear? So that's the first major point of this Siman, and this is a practical point with regards to children. Again, children who are under the age of da'at, who cannot respond, that's what we're talking about. Otherwise, you can just ask the child and the child is believed. Here we come to, now we come to Sif Bet. Now this is a point which we will see over and over again. Mishnah Berurah hints, says it briefly here, but we're going to see this a number of times where this mahloket plays out. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, Sif Bet. This is actually, again, a case in the Gemara. Kazait Chametz lemala ala korah. This is an important principle here. Kazait of Chametz, which is found on top of the beam. So it's in a place which is not reachable. There was a simcha in the house, and they threw bread around, they threw wheat around, and it went up there, and it's there on top of the chandelier. You can't get it. Nonetheless, we obligate you to have to go get a ladder, climb up, and find that piece which you know, the hametz which is there. You have to go and find it and bring it down. Why? Because perhaps during the course of hametz, that piece of that kazayit, note, he says kazayit, that kazayit will fall, and then you may come to eat it, you may come to benefit from it, and so on and so forth. So that's the halacha, you have to go up to get it. Aval, however, however, if chametz in a pit, chametz was dropped into the pit, we don't obligate you to go and take it out. Why? Because what's the chances of it coming out? Right? You're going to have to actively take it out. You're not going to actively do that. Therefore, bitul in your mind would suffice. Now, there are two important deductions here. Number one is, note he says that there is a kazayit there on the beam. Implication being, and then you have to go and get a ladder and take it down. Implication being, I only have to go and get a ladder and take hametz down when I know there's hametz there. There is no obligation to go and search for hametz in places where there normally wouldn't be hametz. I don't have to go and look on top of the chandelier and to see, is there chametz inside? Maybe there's a piece of chametz inside there. No. He's talking about, the Gemara is talking about where you know there is a piece of chametz there. It got thrown there, it got left there, whatever happens. Yeah, so then you have to go and you know there's chametz there, then you have to go and search, you have to go and get a ladder, you have to go and find it and bring it down. That's number one. So you do not have to search in places where it's highly unlikely chametz would have got there, unless, of course, you know chametz got there, or there's a reasonable and plausible possibility that the chametz got there. Number two, this is the major point. It's kazayit of chametz which is found there. Says the Mishnah Berurah, okay, you have to Mishnah Berurah inside, but Mishnah Berurah points this out, and he says, look, the Shulchan Aruch holds that it's a kazayit. Only then are you obligated. Because if it's less than a kazayit, Hachamim didn't obligate you to search for that. According to the Shulchan Aruch, we're going to see this again, the halacha b'drikat hametz is for a kazayit of hametz. Now he does bring poskim who disagree and say even if it's not a kazayit, and Mishnah Berurah, he's not machriya here. He doesn't give a ruling here. Later on, we will see that he is notel lehakel. He does seem to take the more lenient opinion. He does bring here two opinions. He says Shulchan Aruch holds a kazayit. There are opinions which say even less than a kazayit you have to search for. But later on, we will see the mashma'ot of the Shara Tziyun is that he favors the opinion that the obligation of bedikat hametz was only for a kazayit. But the crucial point here is to recognize that what we use as a kazayit nowadays may well not be the real kazayit. And what I mean by that is, yes, we're used to hearing, we're hearing shurim, where rabbis say kazayit, Pesach, kazayit, and Sukkot, kazayit is 27 grams. Lovely. Yeah, do that. But you cannot rely on that lehakel. You cannot say that until 27 grams isn't a kazayit. It's very likely kazayit is much, much less than that. And therefore, there are opinions, by the way, that kazayit is as little as 3 grams. Okay, the general consensus of the poskim is that kazayit is somewhere between 15 to 20 grams, the main, right? So therefore, we're not talking about a big thing here of 27, 30 grams here. We're talking about even 15 grams, that's already problematic. You're going to be searching for that. My main point here is lafuke, is to exclude people who are searching for crumbs. Right? There is an opinion like that, but the main halacha does not. Shulchan Aruch doesn't follow that. The main halacha is that one is searching for a kazait. A kazait, for our purposes on Pesach, is a substantial piece. Substantial meaning a good few grams, not small pieces and bits. That's the key takeaway from this seif. So to summarize the Siman, what we've seen in the Siman, in Seif Aleph, we talked about the distinction between a mouse and a child. The main point being that when a child enters a room with Chametz and you don't know where the Chametz is gone, you have to search that room unless the child tells you where I ate it, or B, there are crumbs. Even if there aren't crumbs, which is the same amount of the piece, but there are crumbs, then we can assume the child was eating it and he left some crumbs and therefore it's fine. And secondly, if there's Hametz in an absurd place, but you know there's Hametz there, you have to go and get it. You have to take a ladder. We're obligated to take a ladder, even though I'm going to get done Pesach. Yeah, it may fall. You're still obligated to go into it, but it's only if I know A, and B is only if it's a kazait. Less than that, you do not need to go and search for it. Okay, any questions on chapter 438 before we move on to Talmud 439? Yes, Robert, go ahead.
Well, I mean, perhaps the obvious question is what happens if it's sufficiently high and it's really not very safe to go and get it? So what do you do then? You can see it. I mean,
yeah, you can see it, but what? Yes.
I gotta. If I go there, I must risk my life. I'm not gonna, obviously that you're not gonna let you go and do that, right? There's
Obviously,
no practical way of getting it.
Obviously not. But
So can we say the bittul will work? I'm not going to go there on Pesach to go and eat it because I'm also not going to risk my life on Pesach to go and eat it.
of course, then you're not obligated to because there's a sakana, so there's no chiyuv in the first place. But you are going to have to make some kind of effort if it's possible and safe to do so. You're going to have to make the effort, right? And you remember we don't rely on bitul unless there's no other option. If there's no other option, it's unsafe to climb up, whatever the reason is, or you don't have a ladder and it's not possible to access. You just found about this a few hours before Pesach. You don't have a ladder at home, or you have a ladder and it's a shaky ladder and it's dangerous to go. Then fine. Then you'll have to rely on bitul. Hachamim will mechayev you when it's possible for you to do it. If you can't do it, lo nitat olam alachei hasharet. You don't want to put your life in danger.
But then you also have a middle category where, okay, you found out with enough time, you can hire a builder. He's going to charge you X £100 to get it. You can do it. It's possible. To what extent do you have to spend?
I would argue you would have to go and get it then. Yes.
Even if there's hefsed merubah to do so.
It's like any other chiyuv d'Rabbanan which you have. You have a chiyuv d'Rabbanan. Go and sort it out.
Okay.
Well, why not? Yeah.
Well, why? Well, I guess why not? Because there's another avenue of that we hold the bittul works, and especially if you're not going to.
Bittul only. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I'm sorry, that's not correct. Bitul only works when there is no bitul only works when there is no possibility to do bedika. It's not that bitul works. The Hachamim made it takana d'Rabbanan.
Okay.
You have to do bedika.
Okay, I'm sorry. I meant, but I was going to say bitul works in the deraita level, but on the Rabbanan level, you're saying that it only works.
There's rabbinic obligation. You have to adhere to the rabbinic obligation. Yeah. Okay. Good. So now we continue to Siman Taf Lamed Tet. Okay, we'll only learn some of this. Again, I'm trying to pick out the important points, the relevant points, or the points which have principles. Okay, so we'll see some of it. Din mi shebadak lo matzah mispar kikrot shenecha bodal seifim, the halachot of someone where chametz and matzah gets confused with each other. Okay, so let's see. Sif Aleph. Tish'a tziburin shel matzah. So this is a very it's not a practical case at all, but there's a important Talmudic principle, which is why I want to learn it. Tisha tziburim shel matzah ve'echad shel hametz. You have 9 matzot, and you've got 1 hametz next to each other. And here is the 9 pieces of matzah, here is the 1 piece of hametz. Uba achbar ve'natar v'lo yadanu natar hametz or natar matzah. And then a mouse comes and he takes something. We see him running away with something. And now we're unable to verify where did he take from. There was some matzah, there was some hametz. We're not sure where he took it from. So we're not sure. Yeah, I know you're thinking, just count. Okay, we don't know exactly how many there are. There's a part of chametz. There's a bit of matzah, and he goes and he takes. Even though there's a majority, the point here is even though there's a majority matzah, the majority meaning more non-chametz than there is chametz. So the mouse we see him running away with something. We don't know what that something is. V'nichnas lebayit baduk. And he goes into a house which has been checked. Now, let me ask you, using basic principles which we know generally, what would you say? Do you need to do bidikat hametz here to that room where the mouse has gone into? Let's hear suggestion. Do you need to do bidikat hametz to the house he's gone into? Think about it. There's much more. There's 9 matzah and there's 1 hametz. So we don't know what he's taken. And he's gone to a house which has been checked now. What's he taken? We don't know. But there's 9 matzah and 1 hametz. What would you say straight away? Do you need to check the house?
I would say bittul. Can't we say bittul barov? So
not bittul barov, but you go after Rov.
Go after Rov. Sorry.
You go after Rov. You go after the majority, and since we can assume that he took the matzah, and therefore you don't have to check the house. No, says the Gemara, absolutely not. Tzarich lahazor velov ve'ulvodko. You have to actually do bidikat hametz again. Why? Leave at the brackets. Shekol hakavua kemehza al mehza dami. This is an important principle in Gemara. We don't say you follow a majority when it's, even if there's a majority, but when it's stationary. The principle, Kavua, if something is stationary, it's considered 50-50. So I'll tell you what the Gemara talks about. The classical example in the Gemara in Ketubot, in Chulin, in a few places. 9 shops, which are kosher, and 1 shop which is not kosher. And you find outside, so you find outside of these, you got a row of 10 shops. I don't know why there'll be 9 kosher shops next to each other, but imagine there's so many Jewish people, lots of butchers, 9 butchers kosher, and one in this, in this parade. Of shops, in this parade of shops, there are 1 non-kosher shop. And outside of these 10 shops, you find a piece of meat. It's come from one of these 10 shops. I don't know which shop it's from. So we can say, you can eat the meat. Because, called the parish meruba parish. It's been taken out. It's been taken out. And therefore, it's come out of the shop. Right? So because it's been separated and it's come out of the shop, we say it's separated from the majority of the shops, and therefore you can follow the 9 over the 1 and assume it's kosher meat as opposed to non-kosher meat. But if somebody walked into one of the shops and bought something, but we don't know which shop he went into to buy it from, so then that's kavua. That's considered stationary. It's when something is stationary, right, then we say that if the doubt happened at the point where everything was stationary, then there's a principle here that it's considered 50-50, and even though it's 9 against 1, still it's considered 50-50. So therefore, there you would have to actually consider it half-half, and it would be a safek. However, look at the continuation of the Shulchan Aruch. In Peresh Hakikar mimekom kviaton teroach bar misham en tzech hazor l'dog parish. If, however, there was 9 and 1, and then someone came and pushed away 1 piece, we don't know where that piece come from, and then that 1 piece is lying out of the 9 and the 1. So it was already separated before the mouse came, and then the mouse came and took it, then it would be fine. Because then we can say that he's taking it not from the stationary place, the place where the doubt is. It's already separated out from it. So because it's already separated out from it, therefore, then we can go back to the regular principles of kolder parish meruba parish. This has numerous. Now you may be thinking, what's the logic for this? I'm not discussing logic for it now. This has numerous ramifications for so many different aspects of halakha, right? In terms of yuchasin, in terms of lineage. There's a lot, this is a huge topic, but I just wanted to bring out this point here, the difference between when we say kol de parish meruba parish, when it's the doubt happens outside of the place of where the stationary, then we can say it follows the majority, but otherwise we say that it's fixed and therefore it's considered half and it's an equal doubt even though there are 9 and 1. Okay. And the only other point in this chapter, before we go on to the next chapter, is in Sif Daled, Bet and Gimel are not so relevant, but in Sif Daled, the Shulchan Aruch says, Heniach Chametz b'zavit zo m'tzao b'zavit aheret tzarich lahzor v'livdok. If you left Chametz, I know I left it here in one place, and then you found it in another place, okay, then you have to go and check the house again, that room again. Why? Because you left it there. How did it get there? That must be a different piece of Chametz which was there. And therefore that Chametz which you had there must have gone and been taken away by someone. So you have to go and check it. Just the point here, this is, again, it's not so relevant because normally you know what your Chametz looks like. But the point being here is that when you can't just assume that if there is Chametz in one place, and it's found another place, it's fine. We don't say that unless you know it's the same Chametz, then it's fine to do so. Okay, good. So that is Siman Taf Lamed Tet. Those are the main points. And now we come to Siman.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
Sorry, but I'm trying to get my head around what is it that's actually stationary in the case where somebody forgot which shop they went to versus the piece of meat feels stationary to me and it's in front of these 10
doubt
treasures.
is happening at a place where the shops are there, the stationary, these are stationary things, as opposed to where it's already been extracted from the place of the doubt. If you find it outside of the shop, then it's extracted out of the 10 shops. So it's already been parish, it's already separated from outside of it. So that's the example. That's why Shulchan Aruch writes that if you had the pile of 9 matzah and 1 chametz, and someone pushed one off and it was lying in front, and then the mouse comes and takes that one, that would be fine, because then you can assume the majority, because that's already been parish from the place of doubt, it's already been separated from it. Okay, I just wanted to bring out that
okay, thank you.
Which is, as I said, it's extremely far-reaching nafkaminot with regards to this. Okay, so let's move on to Taf Mem now. This is interesting. Din chametzo she'eno yehudi shufkad etzel Yisrael ubod aretz seifim. We won't get into this tonight, but we're going to see some principles tonight, which we're then going to, B'ezrat Hashem, discuss next time. Shares, stocks, and this a bit of it stems from here. So let's see. So what happens if you have a non-Jew who deposited Chametz in your house, in a Jewish person's house? So let me introduce first what the Gemara says. The Gemara says on this that, look, on the one hand, there's seemingly the Gemara says there's a kind of contradiction. Because on the one hand, the pasuk says, Parashat Bo, V'lo yera'eh lecha chametz, v'lo yera'eh lecha se'or b'chol gevolecha. There shall not be for you chametz and for you yeast, meaning it's you. It has to belong to you. It has to be an association to you, meaning it has to belong to you. So according to that, if a chametz deposited, if a goy deposited chametz in my house, it's not mine. He deposited it. It's fine. But there's another pasuk which says, Se'or lo yimatze bebatechem. Chametz shall not be found. It doesn't say se'orcha, your chametz. It says se'or. Chametz shouldn't be found. So that's implying that any chametz is a problem, even if it's not yours. So the Gemara asks, there's a kind of contradiction here. It does have to belong to you in order to be a problem, or can it be any chametz is a problem? So the Gemara answer says, it depends. If you have accepted ahrayut, if you've accepted responsibility for it, then although it doesn't belong to you, but you have an association to it, then in some way, on the one hand, the Torah is saying, so any chametz, but not any chametz. If a non-Jew puts his own chametz, completely belongs to him, and puts it in the house, it's nothing to do with you, and you're just leaving it there, and you've got no responsibility over it, it's not a problem. Yeah, everyone agrees it's not a problem. Because even though it's Chametz in my house. It's not mine. I've got no association to it. There has to be some association. But once you've accepted some kind of responsibility for it, then you become, although not the owner, of course, doesn't belong to you, but you have an association to it, and in some way it's lecha, in some way it's connected to you, and therefore, in that sense, you have to get rid of it from the Torah. Understand? Okay? But the question is, in the Rishonim, what level of responsibility do you need? You need a level of responsibility, what level? So it says in Shulchan Aruch Sif Aleph, Eino Yehudi she'ifkid chametzo etzel Yisrael, a non-Jew deposited his chametz in a Jewish person's home. Imu chayav b'achriyato migneva v'aveda, if you're responsible for its loss, for theft, and you lost it, you lost it. If you're responsible for that, then whether it's in your own house or it's in another place in your possession, the Jewish person's possession, hayav levaro, you're duty bound to get rid of it before Pesach. So without going into too much detail, there are different levels of responsibility when it comes to deposits. If I deposit money with you, I deposit an article with you for you to look after it for me. So there is a deposit which is a deposit where I'm only responsible for negligence, and I'm not responsible for anything, only if I was negligent. So I left my window open in the car. You gave me a diamond to look after, and I left the diamond in the car, and I left the windows open on a summer's day, and people walked by and took the diamond. That's negligence. We can assume, even though that's theft, it's a negligent theft, and therefore that's going to be problematic, and you're going to be responsible for negligence. But then the next level up is loss and theft, like theft, which is theft, not negligent theft. You had a burglary, you had locked the house and they burgled. That's another level. So according to this opinion, only if you have a higher level of responsibility are you then, only if you accepted a high level of responsibility, are you then connected to it. But if it's the lower level of responsibility, you're not obligated, you have to get rid of it. Let's just see the other opinion. Leave the Rama, just go to the Shulchan Aruch. V'yesh omrim, and others say this is the Rosh. The first one was the Rambam, second opinion is the Rosh. She'afilu eino alav ela shomer hinam chayav b'pshacha levaro. Even if you're only responsible for negligence, there's still an association because you're responsible in some way. If there's no, okay, good. So those are the two opinions. V'afilu eino chayav b'achrito bedin ela she'yodesh. But the clear implication is if you've got no responsibility for it, you've said clearly, I'm not taking any responsibility, I'm not accepting any liability or responsibility for whatever happens, I'm no responsibility for it, then indeed you can keep it in your house and it's absolutely fine. We will see in the next halakha that you still have to make a partition so you won't come to forget and eat it. But it's fine for it to be in your house because you haven't accepted any responsibility for it. So two opinions in the Shulchan Aruch. The main opinion in Maran, main opinion in Shulchan Aruch is that only if it's a level of you're responsible for theft and loss. The Rosh holds, second opinion holds that even negligence, but the main halakha follows the first opinion because that's the stam. Stam v'yesh. Shulchan Aruch brings an opinion by default and then says some say halakha follows the stam, and therefore only if there's a higher level of responsibility will a person be obligated to get it out of his house. Finish off the seif. This everyone, ואפילו אינו חייב באחריתו בדין, אלא שיודע שאינו יודיעלם ויכפהו לשם המעובד, חייב לבערו ויש חולקים. Shulchan Aruch says that even according to the opinions which hold that we all hold that if you didn't take any responsibility, then you're not connected to it, and therefore it's a problem. However, there was an opinion which says that if you didn't accept responsibility, but this is a kind of non-Jew who you're scared of, and although you didn't officially accept any responsibility, but you know that if you don't give the goods back, then they will force you to pay, through threats, through force, where it may be, then there is an association because then you care about it. What's the idea here? The idea here is if you have responsibility for it, you care for it, and therefore you connected to it. There's a connection to it. So if I've got no responsibility for it, it's just sitting in my house. I've got no connection to it. But since if it's a non-Jew, even if you didn't accept responsibility, they'll make you responsible for it. They'll blame you. Then you are obligated to do so. Some disagree with that. Okay, but that's the point here. So the question really is, a non-Jew, you have a this can be a practical point. A non-Jewish neighbor went away on holiday and asked you to. He's got a very expensive whiskey collection, and he asked you before he went away, please, I'm coming back in a couple of weeks. Can you take them into your house and look after them? He said, great, fine. No responsibility accepted at all. We're friends. Yeah, I'm not gonna, and I keep it in my house. This guy ends up getting delayed. He can't come back home. And in the times of the Gemara, you have no communication with that person. So what are you going to do? Says the Shulchan Aruch, you didn't accept responsibility. Fine, fine. So that's fine. No problem. You keep in your house. If, however, it's very expensive and he asked you to some kind of contract or some kind of acceptance of responsibility, then you have to get it out of, you have to destroy it. You have to destroy it. I'm sorry, you have to get rid of it. You have to destroy it. Okay? If, of course, you can return it to him, i.e., you can tell him, I'm going to open your house and put it back in, great. Now you've done your duty. You don't have to get rid of it then. You don't have to get rid of it when you don't have the means of returning it to him. So then you have to destroy it, get rid of it. Mishnah Berurah says...
You give it to another guy.
Mishnah Berurah says that, firstly, there's the possibility that, this is a debate, but there's a possibility that you can sell it. Some disagree with this because they say it's not really yours. The Torah made it yours because of the ahrayut, the responsibility you have for it. So it's a kind of connection to you. So, so therefore, to say that you can sell that is more difficult. Okay, but as Robert correctly said, if you didn't have another choice, then you could actually, give it over to someone else.
I mean, effectively, don't you need to transfer the achrayut to the other person?
You'd have to correct. You'd have to transfer.
Yeah. In other words, so if you've got a neighbor on the other side who you know the guy trusts, and you say, "Look, Plony said to me, look after this. No, I can't have it. Will you take responsibility for his whiskey?" If he says, "I'll take responsibility,"
if you didn't take responsibility for it, then you are still
connected to
still liable, and therefore you still have a connection to it. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Good. Very good. Excellent.
But the real question I've got is where does this leave us when we sell a chametz? Because effectively that's what's happening. We've got the goy's chametz in our house. We have to be in a situation we can't have any.
That's a different situation we're talking about. We're talking about a non-Jew comes and gives you chametz, deposits it, and then Pesach arrives. We're talking about a different case in which you're selling it to him, and then instead of him coming and collecting it, he's keeping it there until you.
But you still have the goy. But at the end of the day, you still have the goy's chametz in your house.
Correct, 100%.
Right, and what happens? He said, "Hang on a minute. You sold me this stuff."
But that's the goy's chametz. It belongs to him. It's his. It's full stop. It's his. You've got nothing to do with it.
But in the other case, it's also his. It's
no, you accepted that. You accept responsibility for it.
But he's coming to collect after Pesach in the contract, right? So don't I have some responsibility to make sure
No, he's coming to collect during Pesach. He's got the right to collect during Pesach.
So I have no responsibility to. I mean, what I'm saying is, when they create these contracts, you've got to be in a situation where you've got no achrayut. If I don't know, it's in the shed and we get storm and it gets blown away and it's all gone. You shrug your shoulders and you say to God, "Sorry, not my fault. The wind blew it away." You've got to have no achrayut. If the goy comes to collect on Chol Hamoed and says, "Where's my chametz? Here's the contract. The rabbi gave me this," and you say, "Well, sorry, there was a storm and it blew away." He can't come after you, right? Because otherwise, you're in the first case you just quoted.
Very good point. I hope everyone understands the question.
Unless you were negligent, right? So you knew your shed was going to be blown away, and you didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, no, okay. According to he's right. Mark's right. According to the main opinion,
According to the main opinion,
That would be
but maybe
fine.
if we want to be we want to be machmir like all the opinions, you're saying the sale doesn't work according to all the opinions. I mean, it depends. Surely it depends on the sale contract. That's what I'm trying to say. It depends on what the contract between the goy and the rabbi or the based in that's selling says. What responsibilities the balabas has on the chametz. He's going to come on Chol. Let's say he does come on Chol to collect. Let's say he's prepared to pay whatever it is. The extra amount to pick up the stuff. What's my responsibility towards him? Because if I have responsibility towards him, then I'm in a pickle here. Halachically.
No. Okay, I'll get back to you for sure on that, but my quick initial thoughts on this are, to the best of my memory, that part of the kinyan is you're makna him the place of it as well. There's a kinyan on the place as well, and that alleviates that issue. Let me respond to that afterwards.
So you mean he's kind of renting the cupboard that's
correct?
Correct.
Correct. That's what we do.
Because I'm not selling him the cupboard, presumably.
Correct. You're renting the place of this. Yeah, part of it is renting the area where it's being stored. The chametz.
Yeah, I'm just curious how we get out, because obviously we've got out of it. I can't believe these contracts.
Yeah. No. Obviously, we're not just doing it. No, we must. That must be the point here. The fact that there's hilchot of the place.
Okay, thank you.
We do that.
Well, yeah,
we do run that. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, excellent point. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll check that. Yeah, thank you.
All the people of that rabbi who wants to sell, they give also, apart from telling him where all the things, also they tell him their address where they can be found.
Okay, but like Robert, but if he turns up on first day Pesach and you've had a storm, what happens now? The chametz has been all the chametz in the shed is destroyed. Yeah, but that's the way out of it. It must be. Yeah, but very good. Okay, good. Now look at Seif Bet. This is relevant for people who live with non-Jews, which happens. Students do. So continue Seif Bet. If you've taken no responsibility, you do not have to get rid of it, even if it's in your house. Even in the case where it's a ger toshav, there's different reasons why the Shulchan Aruch used this example. But however it may be, Rashi and Rambam give two different reasons why he talks about a ger toshav. A ger toshav is someone who's living in the land of Israel, who's accepted upon himself the 7 Noahide laws. The Shulchan Aruch uses that as an example, but it's talking about anyone, any non-Jew who you're living with together in the same house. And you've got chametz in the house together. It's his chametz, but it's in the house with you where you're living. That's absolutely fine, because you've got no responsibility over it. But we're told the Gemara tzarich le'asot lefanav mechitza gavoah 10 tefachim k'dish le'shkach v'yochelenu. You have to make a wall high 10 tefachim to make a reminder for you not to eat this food. There's a few interesting points here. So the practical point of this is, if you're living with a non-Jew, room share or house share, and you share things like that, there's going to be, of course, if you're living like that, there are going to be kashrut issues throughout the year. And you've navigated your way around that, but there's chametz lying around, and you have equal access to the rooms. And he wants to leave his chametz, his stuff lying around the house, so he's got every right to do so, right? And that's fine. And you tell him you can keep it there, but wherever you're leaving chametz, I need to put up a mechitza, a wall of 10 tefachim. Now, it's specifically a wall is mentioned, not just covering it. You need to put some kind of partition, a partition which cannot easily be taken away, meaning you can't just do kofeh kli. So there's a halakha that if on Pesach you find, on Pesach itself, not Chol HaMoed, on the Chag itself you find chametz, then kofeh alav kli, then you just cover it up with something and sort it out after. Now, why do we say build a wall? Because you can't build that wall. You can't make a mechitza. Even mechitzat ara you can't make on Chag or Shabbat. So therefore, you have to just cover it over with the kli. But before Pesach, you can make a mechitza, and a mechitza of 80 centimeters. That's all it is. 10 tefachim is only 10 centimeters. That is sufficient to act as the kind of wall. What we do nowadays, when we sell our chametz, is that you need to, the wall of the cupboard is acting as the mechitza, and then we put a sign there as well to remind us. But if you didn't have chametz put away in the cupboard, you had chametz lying around in your house, which you had sold, you'd have to put up a mechitza, a kind of wall, to act as a reminder that you cannot eat from this. Now, the Biur Halacha discusses this halacha that I have to put up a reminder. Does it apply to any chametz? My non-Jewish partner, my non-Jewish roommate has, or is it only chametz which is ready to be eaten? So there's a strong argument to say that if he's got flour or he's got yeast, then I don't have to worry about that, because by the time I take it and I start finding the parts and I start cooking it, I remember it's Pesach. Only ready chametz, ready pieces of bread, that's a problem. So different opinions on that. In practice, we would say anyway, make the wall. That's an important. It's an interesting point. Another very interesting point. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Is that there's a halacha that we're meant to try to eat bread which is baked by a Jew. It's a halacha of pat akum. You're not meant to eat bread which has been baked. I'm talking about kosher bread, kosher ingredients, but it's been baked by a non-Jew. You're meant to prefer to eat bread baked by a Jew, unless there are certain conditions when you're allowed to have bread baked by a non-Jew. So, can we say that a person is particular the whole year to only have pat Israeli? It only has bread from a Jewish bakery the whole year round. I don't have to worry about putting up a partition, because what's the non-Jew got? He's got his bread bought from his non-Jewish bakery. I have no temptation to that, because the whole year round I don't eat that. So there were some poskim who say yes, that's fine, you don't have to put a petition for that. But in practice we say no, because since Mikar Hadin, strictly speaking, you're allowed to eat this bread. Nonetheless, and you don't, but nonetheless, you still have to put up a wall. That's just an interesting point to think about. Now, what happens if a non-Jew puts something in your house against your will? So we've talked about where you accepted responsibility. That was Aleph. We talked about in Bet, you didn't accept responsibility. That's fine, as long as you make a partition. The Ramah says the same halacha applies to a non-Jew who puts chametz in your house without asking you. So obviously you've taken no responsibility. And then again, if he put the chametz in your house before Pesach, you're going to have to create a partition. If he put the chametz in your house during Pesach, then during the Chag, you can't create the partition, so just cover it over, and then on Chol HaMoed, you'll create the partition. But that's when he deposits it in your house. Now we're going to see in Siv Gimel what happens. This can happen. You have a problem with your house over Chag, and you call in permissible situations on Chol HaMoed. You call in a plumber. You call in a builder, whatever. Maybe again, I'm not going into details of Chol HaMoed now when something like that would be permissible to call a plumber and a builder to your house on Pesach. But theoretically speaking, a non-Jewish worker comes into your house and he wants to bring his sandwiches in. Is that a problem? So let's see. Siv Gimel. Eino Yehudi shenichnas lebet Yisrael v'chametzo beyado. A non-Jewish person, for whatever reason, entered your house and is carrying his chametz, carrying his sandwiches, carrying his piece of bread. Eino zakuk leotzio. You don't have to ask him to leave it out. He can bring it into your house. Afal pisha Yisrael ro'eh chametz sheno Yehudi en bekach klum. Even though the Jewish person is seeing the chametz of the non-Jew, there's no problem to see chametz. You don't get hana'ah, you don't get benefit from looking at chametz. Okay, we will talk maybe in the last few moments or right at the beginning of next week, we're going to talk about smelling chametz. It's a very, very interesting question. Walking past the bakery on Chag or on any time of Pesach and actually intentionally trying to smell. Sometimes it's a beautiful smell. You should know, by the way, we learned this a few years ago in Tiferet and Hilchot Brachot. There's actually opinions in the Rishonim and in Shulchan Aruch whether you say a blessing on the smell of a bread. There's two opinions in Shulchan Aruch whether you say a blessing on the smell. It's a beautiful smell. So that's a very, very interesting question. But that's smell. Okay, but Israel ro'eh hametz and bekach klum. A Jew who's seeing the hametz, there's no problem with that. So you can bring it into your house, and that's fine. The Torah says, "V'lo yera'eh lecha seor, v'lo yera'eh lecha hametz." It shouldn't be seen to you. Yeah, it shouldn't be seen to you what belongs to you. You can't see that hametz. You can't know. Doesn't mean it's not seeing; it's belonging to you. Therefore, since you can see it, this is an example where the Hachamim interpret the pasuk, which the simple reading of the pasuk would be, "V'lo yera'eh lecha hametz," would mean you're not allowed to see chametz on Pesach. Perhaps, probably that's how the Karaites explain the pasuk. They're not allowed to see any chametz on Pesach. But the Hachamim's interpretation turned it the other way around. You can see it doesn't belong to you, and it's forbidden even if you can't see it if it does belong to you. It can be another side of the world. It's a problem. Okay. Aval asur lahaloto imo al hashulchan va'afilu behefsek mapa. You cannot eat together with him on the same table, even if you create a mechitza, or not mechitza, like a kind of sign to symbolize. So what's this talking about? So there's a halacha when it comes to two people eating together meat and milk. People don't really know this. It's an important point. It's a explicit halacha, Gemara and explicit halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, that you and your husband and wife sit down to have dinner together, and she's in the mood to have dairy, he's in the mood to have meat. That's fine. They have different diets, different food, absolutely fine. They can eat together, but they have to create a siman. They have to create a kind of recognition. I'm eating meat and you're eating dairy, so that we don't come to mix our foods together. Give me your fork, put it in my mouth. So you have to create it. How? Hefsek mapa. You put like a something in between which isn't meant to be there, or one uses a mat, one doesn't use a mat. So again, it shows some kind of recognition, and then they're allowed to eat together. But just to have two people sitting on the same table together, one eating meat, one eating milk, both Jewish people, is asur. Interestingly, you're allowed to eat with a non-Jewish during the year. There's no problem sitting at a table in your office, and people sit together to have lunch, and he's having his non-Jewish, non-kosher food, and you're having kosher food. That's fine, because here we're not concerned that you're going to come to swap and to eat with each other, because it's not kosher. You're not concerned. So only with two Jewish people eating kosher food, one dairy, one meat, it's a problem. However, on Pesach, even that doesn't work. If the non-Jewish person wants to eat on your table together with you, that's asur. Why? We're not concerned you're going to come to eat it, but we're concerned that because the isur of Pesach is b'mashehu, is even a drop, as opposed to other isurim which are normally more than a drop, al-kazait. So the isur of Pesach is even a drop, even 1 crumb. We're concerned it's going to mix together, and therefore Hachamim said it's forbidden to eat on the same table with the non-Jew, even if you put a separation, a partition, because it's on the same table, same time, you cannot eat together. So it's absolutely fine. The non-Jewish builder comes into your house, he brings his Chametz sandwiches with him, and he can eat them, but he can't eat them with you. By the way, the clear implication is that he can eat them on your table. Shabbos speaks this out explicitly. He says that you can eat it on your table, as long as afterwards you clean it up. He says, if you're not eating there, he can leave his food on the table. As long as the Israel is careful afterwards to clean the table and to wash it, there won't be any crumbs left, and to make sure he doesn't leave any of his chametz. So I know people get, people will think to themselves, how on earth can you allow a goy with chametz into your house on Pesach? It's clear in Shulchan Aruch, you can bring them in. They can eat on your table, as long as it's away from any of your Pesach food, and it's away from any of your Pesach dishes, and as long as afterwards they finish eating on your table, you clean it up afterwards and ensure there is no drops of chametz remaining. Let's just finish off the Siman, and I'll take the questions. Okay, let's just finish off Siv Dalet. Israel she'ifkid chametzo etzel Israel havero etzel no Yehudi. a Jewish person who deposited Chametz by another Jewish person, even if the person who you deposit, the Jewish person who deposited it by, accept responsibility, meaning here you have a situation where two Jewish people can be liable for the prohibition, both the depositor and the person who's been deposited by, unless obviously they sell it, get rid of it, etc. So we've talked about a non-Jewish person depositing by a Jewish person, and then it's a potential problem for the Israel, for the Jewish person. But there can be situations where it's a problem for both Jewish people in a case where a Jew deposits by a Jewish person. Okay, good. That brings us to the end of Siman Taf Mem. So what we've learned in this Siman is we've seen what happens if a non-Jewish person deposits Chametz in your house before Pesach. And it depends whether you've taken responsibility. The question is what level of responsibility. If you haven't taken responsibility, it's fine as long as you make a partition. And even if a guy leaves Chametz in your house on Pesach, it's fine as long as you create a partition. And you're allowed to have a non-Jew in your house with Chametz, with his own Chametz. This is different. So here you don't have to make a mechitza, by the way. But we learned in Sif Gimel that he's allowed to come to you, don't have to make a mechitza because he's holding it. It's with him. It's his food. As opposed to where he deposited, he left it, then you have to make a mechitza. You may come to forget and eat it. When he's carrying it, he's brought it with him, that's his lunch for the day. You don't have to create a mechitza. You can come in, you can eat on your table, as long as you clean it afterwards, and as long as you don't eat together with him on the same table. So that concludes what we have seen tonight. So we've done 438, 439, and 440. Fourth Taf Mem Aleph is not really relevant. It's you take a mashkon, you take a collateral of Chametz, or vice versa, right? We're going to skip that out. Then we're going to begin Taf Mem Bet 442, which is really important point. Ta'arovet of Chametz. What's the definition of mixtures of Chametz? And with this, we start to understand, mixtures of Chametz, things mixed in, Chametz Nuksher, the Rabbin. That's Hashem. I will all go through next time. Okay, are there any questions? Robert, you've been waiting. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi. So 2 questions. First of all, so your builder's left. There's a pile of crumbs on the table. So you're going to hoover up the crumbs. Presumably, do you have to have in mind not to make any kinyan on this, or because it's less than a kazai? What?
Well, no doubt.
What happens if he, he gets bored halfway through his sandwich and he leaves, half a bacon sandwich in your dustbin, this kind of thing. I mean, which is more than a kazai.
Yeah, so you would preferably ask him to take it out with him. If he refuses to do so and just leaves it in your bin, or just he just didn't think and he threw it in the bin, his leftover sandwich, then there would be a tzad to say that your house is now konet because he's been mafkir. He's given up ownership over it, and therefore your house has been mafkir, and therefore you'd have to actually go out and burn it.
Yeah, but surely you could only be koner when it's in your benefit to be koner, right? I mean, this is koner is not in your benefit.
No, hatzar koner. Your house is koner.
I have to tell you a story that I think it was Weetabix did a promotion, and they picked the Golders Green. The week they picked to do a promotion, they posted 3 Weetabix in everybody's house. It was Shabbat Cholamod Pesach. So and I was going to my friends in